Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and I got a brand new leveling method for all of you, where players have started to use low level characters like level 11 or even a level 10 character to boost all of their ults to level 80. And it's incredibly easy to do, and it's become a very popular leveling method among so many players over these last few weeks, with players taking the time to boost others like their friends or random strangers, or even boost all of their ults to max level incredibly quickly by spamming all of their dungeons on a godlike character. By capping out a level of a character, it allows them to sometimes, on certain classes, to scale insanely well within leveling time walking dungeons in particular. Because of that scaling, a very geared low level character can actually solo these dungeons all by themselves, becoming literal walking gods amongst men in these instances. And it's actually incredibly easy to set up a character of your own so you can boost all of your ults, and that's exactly what I wanted to cover today, going over how you can set up a low level Twink character for yourself to either boost all of your friends or all of your ults incredibly quickly while the current time walking 20th anniversary update buff is still active. As always, if you guys want to see more guides like these for the War Within expansion, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. So when picking the best class for you to boost others or boost all of your alt characters, it's very similar to Mr. Pandaria. The same classes during Mop Remix are going to be the most optimal choices for boosting all of your alts if you do end up making a Twink to boost your friends or other characters. Out of all the options, the Fury Warrior is the most popular one, mostly because it can queue as a tank or as a DPS, so it makes it easier for you to get into groups. The access of defensive stance also can make it easier for you to mitigate damage a little bit better, so it allows you to stay in the DPS spec while still being able to be a fully functional tank with incredible survivability. Normally, Fury Warriors would want to try to boost players at level 11 once they pick up the ability of Bloodthirst, which provides additional rage generation and healing. However, you can technically also run them as level 10 as well. You will just be missing the Titans group that allows you to run two-handers, and you'll just need to switch out for one-handers if you just don't want to go through the extra leveling process. But if you are picking any of them, the Fury Warrior is by far the most popular option that you'll see most players doing right now with Twink boosting. Mr. Monk is another fantastic option, as it allows you to queue as a healer, but you'll primarily be playing healer from a DPS format. You're not really there to heal others, although you can do so, but you'll be primarily there for fantastic single target damage, as healers within lower level content actually get a little bit more of a leg up when it comes to their damage output. And for Mistweaver to get a better leg up on the Rising Sun kicks is perfect, because it deals fantastic single target damage plus 70% more with fast feet, and you'll for the most part will try to start gearing out a Mistweaver fresh at level 10, so you don't really need a lot of levels on this character before you can start boosting others. Another popular class choice is actually that of a druid, either as a restoration or as a guardian. You'll primarily be in resto or guardian for the faster queues, but you're primarily there to mostly focus on damage. The guardian and resto can be played both at either level 10 or 11, and while you can do a little bit of tanking or a little bit of group healing, again, you're primarily basically choosing between a melee DPS version or a caster version, with guardian mostly DPS and from a bear with swipes and thrashes, while restoration mostly with magical damage. And lastly, another great option is going to be of that of an arcane mage. The only drawbacks of playing yourself as arcane is you're not a tank or a healer, so you won't benefit from the fast queues, but with so many players playing with tank and healer roles, especially at lower levels, you actually have such short queues as DPS, at least for the time being, that it's not that bad. As arcane mage, you'll primarily play this character at level 10, because literally at level 10, you already have all the tools you need in order to deal great AoE damage, but also fantastic single target damage. Also, if you are going to be making a new character, if you really want to care about racials technically do make a pretty big difference at lower level, specifically the Lightforged Draenei racial, where they can deal with their active ability a big burst of holy damage with a massive laser beam ability. That one is actually very strong at early levels and helps you clear through bosses and trash bags very quickly, even though it is on a fairly hefty CD. Otherwise, though, racials don't necessarily really matter that much. You can just pick whatever you want to, since you're kind of stuck at level 10 anyway, so whatever racial you think is going to be more useful for you, generally some decent options. So whatever racial you think will be more useful for you at that level bracket is perfectly fine. All of them are fairly close. The Lightforged Draenei is the only one that really has any kind of a damage advantage. Now, to make the character a proper twink, you'll want to disable your experience gains. Otherwise, you'll be able to level past a certain level bracket, and then you'll require more gear, and then you can no longer benefit from the scaling properties of the twinking experience. So, as an Alliance player, to disable your experience, you want to head to the Stormwind Keep and go to the main big room where you usually would find all of the different battle masters to queue for BGs from. In that same room with a big map, there'll be in a corner an experience eliminator called Besten. As a Horde character, you'll want to head to the Valley of Honor and go to like the main class building, and upstairs over here you can actually take a bit of a shortcut up through the barracks and all the way at the top of the stairs. Next to the big table in the center, you'll find your Horde's experience eliminator of slats. Now, either of the experience eliminators will require for that character to at least have 10 gold in order to be able to cap out your experience, which you can easily do since your alt account and your main account should be sharing the Warbound bank. So if you dip into that, grab a little bit of gold from there, and then you could use that to eliminate experience gains in order to make sure to cap your character at either level 10 or 11, whichever level preference is your choice. Now, once you're locked in your level, then you'll want to figure out how to gear your character, and the best place to start to get some early gear once you've capped your level is actually at the 20th anniversary grounds outside of Cameras of Time. Here we have a handful of vendors that you can utilize pretty early on to get yourself some fantastic gear and upgrades for a capped out character. First one is going to be Baba Dormo, which is the classic time walking vendor. On that vendor we have an assortment of different items for a variety of different armor types. Specifically, you have boots, which will have a variety of good stats. You have a helm with mail, you have yourself leather, cloth, plate. Those are all really good as well. You have some rings, which if they are part of your best in slot stats, those are generally going to scale well, but also weapons. This vendor has fantastic weapons. Some even have bonus effects on them, and they're definitely worth your time and worth picking up on a brand new Twink character. Then there's the other vendor, which is either going to be one for Alliance, either the Stormpike Supply Officer or Frostwolf Supply Officer. Also there, you will have items that are also in the very same ballpark of item level, but they have different stats on them. So if you need a ring with more haste, or maybe a ring with crit haste on it instead, or if you're looking for cloaks, this is another great vendor to get yourself a fantastic cloak with primary stats on top of it. And all of these items are going to scale incredibly well for a level 10 or a level 11 character. Outside of that, however, we're going to have to spam some dungeons to get as many socketed items as possible. Sockets and socketed gear scale incredibly well for low-level characters because they allow you to gain additional secondary stats on that character, and we could even utilize the Shadowlands gems plus also some of the Shadowlands unique gems in order to gain us additional extra survivability or even additional mobility while we're doing some of the lower end content. And the general rule of thumb of things when it comes to sockets is the more sockets the better. So try to fill out as many of your pieces of gear with sockets, and the best place to get more sockets is usually going to be from dungeons from the Burning Crusade era or dungeons from the Wrath of Lich King era. Before we dive into soloing dungeons, which you can actually start doing fairly early on the character, once you get yourself as much gear as you can from these time warp vendors, you also want to make sure your weapons are equipped with a life stealing enchant, which is how you're going to be able to gain yourself additional survivability within dungeons. Just spam any abilities that do AoE damage and you can do some pretty sizable pulls, and you will be able to survive a good portion of those pulls all by yourself, even without some of the best in slot items. Once you get some weapons with life stealing, this will at least be the bare minimum for you to start being able to solo dungeons if you are really trying to maximize as many socket slots on your character as possible. When it comes to TBC dungeons, you actually are limited in which dungeons you can do. One of the best ones is going to be with Hellfire Ramparts, which has a variety of items that has multiple socket slots on them. So if you get lucky while farming these items, those will be fantastic. The only boss that I had a hard time with is the last one, because once the dragon lands, it has a one-shot mechanic, for some reason scaling way too high right now, and it does way more damage than your health can allot for. So once you get the first two bosses, you kind of want to skip the last one, and then you could run this dungeon as many times until you're locked out. Another dungeon within the same area as Hellfire Ramparts is the Blood Furnace, also another fantastic dungeon where you can get a variety of different items with multiple chances for sockets, and This one is actually pretty doable. You don't really have too many one-shot mechanics, except for the last boss. When you see him kneeling down on the ground, definitely take a bit of a step back before the AoE damage goes out. In Wrath of Lich King, we have ourselves the Utgard Keep, which has a couple of items for sockets, like meta sockets and a helm for plate class, for example. Now, that's another dungeon that you can dive into, but your dungeon pool is actually going to be small because all of these dungeons do scale with your level. So not all of them are going to come with different items that your character will be able to obtain. So your itemization is actually a little bit more limited, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I think it's a good thing because you don't need to do every single dungeon in Wrath of Lich King to get your best of the items, because a lot of those items require for a higher level before you can even wear them. So this gives you a more limited pool of dungeons you can run in order to hyper specify all the pieces that you need from those instances. Besides the gear that you can get from TBC and Rat dungeons, there's also another item that you can get from the Dragon Isles in Azure Span. All the way in the Azure Archives, there's a rare that spawns on this platform specifically, and I believe he just got killed by a higher level player. Okay, you respond already. It's the Forgotten Creation. So this is a rare that drops the neck of Amnesia, which is a very, very good neck, mostly because it's a guaranteed drop from the rare itself, and it has decent stats on it, but we're primarily trying to get this early on because we could put sockets on this neck. Using the very similar jeweler settings that we can get from the War Within expansion, in Dragonflight there was a different type of setting for Dragon Isles necklaces specifically that allowed you to put up to 3 sockets on a neck slot, which allows you to equip 3 extra sockets on a character easily. And as long as you buy those jeweler settings on your main account, and then again, like with the gem slots and then the enchants, if you put them on your Warbound bank, then you can actually draw those items from the Warbound bank on your current character, since even a trial account shares the Warbound bank together with your main account. So a lot of these items can be put and traded through the bank, which is what I did specifically. Since a lot of the trial accounts can even utilize the auction house to begin with, you will have to buy some of those things on your main in order to facilitate this carry type of business. Now, let's go over how you can actually boost your friends, or let's say boost your alt characters by using 2 accounts. Let's say you're just trying to use this character to, let's say, boost all of your alts in preparation for the patch 11.1. You can't just party up with this character because while their experience gained is eliminated, joining up and grouping up with this character will also remove the experience of everybody else around you, though with only a temporary debuff. Once you leave the group, then after a few minutes, then you lose the debuff and you can go back to earning EXP. So the best way you can actually start boosting yourself is to actually land in the same instance as this other account, as this other character. The easiest way I found how to actually join a group together as the carry character and the boosted character is by going to Chromie and selecting a timeline, usually Burning Crusades or maybe even Wrath of Lich King, and then queuing for a specific dungeon at the same time. So you would have 2 different instances of WoW active at once, and you would go for specific dungeons and try to queue into, let's say, Hellfire Ramparts on both of those characters. And if the queue pops up simultaneously at the same time for both of those characters, then you're very, very likely in the same instance. So that is the hardest part of getting this going, is landing in the same instance on your twinked out character and then your character you're looking to level. But once you run through that dungeon, from there you could just start queuing time walking dungeons as much as you want to. For this week right now, it's time walking Wrath of Lich King week, so you would just spam queue that as much as possible. You could basically leave that character that you're trying to power level at the start of the instance and just play your twinked out character the entire time. And you may ask yourself, like, maybe somebody will be suspicious about why somebody's AFK at the front of the instance, but over the last few dungeons that I've been spamming so far, a lot of people are very receptive to being boosted by a twink character. Like, people are willing to take a free ride and usually are not going out of the way to report any character in order to get him kicked out of the group, though that sometimes may happen. But in most cases, most people are really cool with a fast and easy dungeon queues, as well as insanely fast experience gains. The best way to maximize this time walking dungeon experience is to try to rush to the final boss as quickly as possible if available. Not all dungeons will allow you to rush the final boss that quickly. Some dungeons will require for you to clear the entire instance before you're able to meet the final boss, but if you can somehow skip to the final encounter in order to maximize your experience gains, that would be the best way of going about it. And then from there, once inside, run through them, AoE everything down, obliterate and nuke everything to your heart's content. In most cases, the character that you'll be playing as a Twink doesn't have a lot of abilities to use, so the rotation is going to be incredibly simple. Like for a Fury Warrior, it's just mostly spamming Whirlwind while watching all of your lifesteal proc all over every enemy within the dungeon, keeping you plenty alive. And maybe sometimes I'll switch over between defensive stance or berserker stance depending on how much damage I'm taking and which bosses I'm fighting. But for the most part, you just run through and spam 1, maybe 2 buttons at most in order to make your way and blaze your way through these dungeons incredibly quickly. And that is more or less how you can utilize this whole boosting system that a lot of people are doing right now with twinked out characters. It takes a little bit of time in order to actually prep a character, but really not a lot, as long as you can get some enchants and some gems and maybe buy them on your main, put them in your bank, take all these items on this Twink character, run a few dungeons which they can easily solo in order to get a few more sockets and a few more pieces. Once again, just a little bit of gear, you can really get a character kickstarted really early on. And sometimes you can even land yourself in a full group of other players running around with twinked out characters, and that way your dungeons can be incredibly quick, which means that everybody is getting insane amounts of XP rather rapidly. And that's more or less how you can utilize the Twink system in order to power level any of your friends or any of your alt characters. Like I said, it really doesn't take you all that long in order to get the gear necessary in order to be able to start soloing these dungeons. And once you can easily solo them, then you can easily carry everybody else around you in your group all the way through all these instances. It is incredibly fast and easy. As always, I want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys did enjoy this update. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give this video a like. I would very much appreciate it. Join our Discord community for any future guides for the War Within expansion, whether it is for some of the upcoming patches or current updates that are right now available. Also, let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.